most people don't fail retirement by running out of money. Like they fail retirement because of lack of purpose or
Yeah. Yeah.
identity or things to do.
Think like, yeah, what are you going to do with all that time? What are you going to do with all that time now? You got to fill it with something. Doesn't have to be a job. Can be a job. Don't feel bad. I just think if your plan is to just wake up every day and figure out what you're going to do, I would encourage you to think that through a little bit more. Do you ever wonder if you could or should be doing something better with your money? If so, you're in the right place. Join us on the Make the Most of Your Money podcast as we discuss the technical, behavioral, and spiritual elements necessary to making the most of your money. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the Make the Most of Your Money podcast. I'm your host, Colin Page. With me is my co-host, Taylor Stewart. How are you, Taylor?
Doing good, man. Great to see you.
Yeah, good to be back after a holiday break in which every single person in our household, save my wife, got the flu, and
It's only a matter of time.
Yeah.
It's coming for her.
It's coming for her. Yeah, she knows it too. Yeah, so it's good to be back in the saddle, and
I just say holiday breaks aren't the same as they used to be. It's not a break at all with kids. It's a lot. It's more work.
Gosh, yeah. I think like this is my problem. Like I'm remembering back to how much I look forward to breaks and how freeing it was, even through college and whatnot, now it's just like I dread it because it means 24 hours a day of childcare.
And if that and if you spend like especially in our job, like year end's a busy time, and for like a lot of our clients come to us kind of when they have time. So it's like everybody else is off. Let me ask a question. Be like, no, I don't have time anymore and so love hanging out with the kids, but it's hard when the job is calling too. And so it was just it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
especially if you're
love
sick
that
like you were.
Email on December 30th. Hey, can we do one more QCD? Like, no, you can't. The window's closed.
Yeah,
can't do it anymore. Well, speaking of QCDs,
qualified charitable distributions for those wondering. So
thank you. Yeah, so I was thinking about what to talk about today, and this is kind of one of the bigger topics in my world or in my practice. I focus primarily on retirees and people, within 5 to 10 years of retirement and into retirement. And the number of people that reach out in this time frame who have never worked with a financial advisor before it's a significant number. So, it seems like a natural break point in someone's financial life where the game really changes and maybe the things that got you to this point, you've been successful in your career, you've saved the right amount, you've, invested and not touched it, and you paid down debt, but now you're staring down retirement in the next few years, and that just hits different. Going from saving to spending, will we have enough if we turn off the income spigot, so to speak?
You're talking about people reaching out when they get a few years from retirement. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like that's like a natural point that a lot of people look for help from an expert.
Sure.
So I wanted to talk this episode, kind of break down the areas of your financial life that change when you retire. How does the game change? We did an episode, a little while back about how the game changes when you have kids and what are kind of the big areas of your financial life to think about at that point. Sure. So this seems like another natural break point in your financial life to kind of zoom in on.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I also there can be, this is a very legitimate change. Like it's a actually very real change. Like, kids that whole mountain analogy of like climbing up the mountain then down the mountain. It's very true. Like having kids is just another part of climbing up the mountain in a lot of ways. But like truly, there it is a completely different, to use the mountain analogy, like technique going down versus up. And so it's good to start preparing for that a little bit ahead of time. And so definitely better late than never. And so yeah, there's a lot to talk about here.
Yeah. So let's start it off. I mean, I think one of the biggest things that people don't expect maybe right off the bat is kind of the more emotional side of retirement, especially when you're in, you're coming to me in your mid 50s, probably at the top of your career, you're in management, you're running things. um, you have people working for you. Work provides a lot of structure and social connection and meaning, and then then retirement happens, or at least, if we're talking about the classic kind of retire at 62, 65, and get the company watch and hit the golf course. Who There's this big question of like, who are you without your job?
Yeah.
And that's, not necessarily on the financial side of things, but super important because it does impact the financial side, for sure.
Yeah. The financial side, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but this is, yeah, retiring is a very dangerous thing for a lot of typically men, is what I've found. But it's dangerous because I firmly believe retiring to do nothing is maybe smoking cigarettes is the quickest way to shorten your life expectancy, but retiring to doing nothing will just knock 5 to 10 years off your life. Like this whole idea of like, I'm going to just do nothing. I'm going to think about nothing. I'm going to do nothing is the quickest way to atrophy and die. Now, doing it for a year or two is fine, to take a little break and a breather from grinding for all your life. But like the idea of I'm just going to do nothing all day is a horrible retirement plan. It may sound like a dream right now. And so this like concept of retiring to something, I think is so important to think through. And having that something to retire to, it does not have to be a paycheck. It can be kids, it can be grandkids, it can be charities, it can be we've got retired people in our neighborhood who like, his thing is like cleaning up the park. Like having that something to do is just so important, and for a lot of reasons. But yeah, I feel very strongly about this. When I hear people talk about like, I want to retire and do nothing, I'm like, I hope that's just for a short term, because that's just not going to work out very well in the long term, in my experience.
Yeah, and I mean, you think during your career, all the trips like you couldn't take because you were too busy, or had kids at home, and that those big European vacations where now you finally have the time to do it in retirement, but maybe that it takes up a month of your year. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing the
Yeah.
other 11 months?
Yeah.
To keep busy or to stay fresh and
Yeah.
stay engaged. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like most people, once you get to a certain level of affluence, most people don't fail retirement by running out of money. Like they
Mm-hmm.
fail retirement because of lack of purpose or
Yeah. Yeah.
identity or things to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Totally.
many of them end up going back to work not because they need to financially, but because like has been the source of their
Yeah. And
stability and connection.
maybe it's an influence of my dad telling me my entire life that he never wants to retire, like never does. Like, and that the idea of a traditional retirement makes me deeply uncomfortable of sitting around and doing. Choosing to work is totally fine. It's not like if you're working at 75, that's not a bad thing. If somebody does go back to work, it's okay. It doesn't mean you're poor and don't have money. It can just mean you're, uh, you're still have value. Like you're not dead. Like 62 is so young nowadays. You're at your prime. You know more than you've ever known. Hopefully you still have some physical abilities left. Like I love it. And so again, it doesn't have to be a paycheck, but some people like talk about, oh, I might have to go back to work. I don't know, man. I've seen more people 2-3 years into retirement choose to go back to work because they miss it. And and it's so different choosing to work than having to work. And I think it's really cool. I think we're both very blessed that we love what we do. Like
Mm.
I love my job. It makes me sad when people talk about, oh no, Monday's coming. Like I don't hope, I understand you got to do what you got to do, but like find a job you're super passionate about and make working not a bad thing. It's fun. It can be fun. And so I think that's, yeah, like if you do find yourself having to choosing to go back to work, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. And I like to think of it through the lens rather than, using the word retirement, um, thinking about through the lens of financial independence. It's not, it's the freedom to go do something or to not do
Mm-hmm.
something. And so maybe it's, maybe you're not fully retiring, you're still working some, but like what are the parts of your job that you hate doing that
Yeah.
maybe if you were to, what would it look like if you only did it part-time or only did the things that
Mm-hmm.
you really enjoyed doing and shifted some of
Mm-hmm.
those, more mundane or taxing responsibilities to somebody else. Or yeah,
Yeah.
like you said, you still have a lot to offer. You have a lot of wisdom, your skills, the technical skills, the kids may be running circles around you, by that point, but you still have the wisdom and the
Mm-hmm.
temperament to lead and to contribute. And so, yeah, I think that the whole idea of retiring at 65 or whatever, and, never working again or completely disengaging, that's just not the reality for most people anymore. Retirement, especially now, like it's a 25-30 year period potentially, like it's
Yeah.
possibly
Yeah.
a third of your life. And so if you're going into that without much of a notion for where you're going to find meaning and purpose and structure and things in that, like you may be disappointed after, you can only play so much golf, Taylor.
Well, okay. So careful there because I was gonna say, I want to soften my stance a little bit. Like some jobs you can't go back to. Like I have a dear friend who was a surgeon before and he can't go back to being a surgeon.
Yeah.
Like, but he's done some teaching, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Like, so again, it's retiring to something. It doesn't have to be a job. But speaking of golf, his thing, he wants to play 1,000 golf courses across the world. That's become his thing. And he's chasing it. And he's loving it. He's seeing the world. And he invites friends on it. That's so cool. So he is playing a
Mm.
ton of golf, but it's not, the same foursome every morning. Now, like, I love golf. Like, that'd be pretty cool. But like, I'm saying, like, that's a great example of like, you might think, oh, he just plays golf all day. I'm like, man, he is seeing the entire planet. Like
Yeah.
and he's blessed to be able to do that. But he's just made it this adventure. He's retired to this for this stage of life while he does have his physical abilities to be able to do that. And I think that's so cool. And like, so I encourage people like, think like, what are you going to do with all that time? You get, if like, typical if you were blessed to be able to work 9 to 5, 4 to 5 days a week, like what are you gonna do with all that time now? You got to fill it with something. Doesn't have to be a job, can be a job. Don't feel bad. I just think if your plan is to just wake up every day and figure out what you're gonna do, I would encourage you to think that through a little bit more.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So let's talk now, like financials. What in your
Yeah.
financial life changes? How does the game change? And I think, obviously the big thing is the paycheck stops. And so now you are creating a stream of income from your investments, from, maybe a pension if you have that, or an annuity if you gotten into that, Social Security at some point, or maybe like we were talking about, you've got a part-time job, maybe you've got kind of an encore career where you went back and you're teaching or giving back, and you've got a little paycheck from that. But
Mm-hmm.
you move from one source of income to multiple sources, and managing that transition, is a change. And
Mm-hmm.
so, in your working years, your income was mostly fixed. Taxes are reactive. In retirement, your income's much more flexible. You're the
Mm-hmm.
one deciding how open or shut the spigot is, and
Mm-hmm.
and taxes can be more proactive as you're deciding, what income sources you're going to pull from and when. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this is a big topic, but this I think is like the key change, when we're talking about, what changes in your balance sheet or your cash flow.
Yeah, and that's where like it is completely different because assuming you are spending assets, most likely you're going to be drawing down on some of your assets. That is like, is if you've been a diligent saver and you're so used to seeing that number increase every year, every month, if you're lucky, it's wild to start to see it go the other way. Because a lot of people kind
Yeah.
of have that like, oh, yes, I hit this figure, then I hit that figure, and they can feel really good. Um, and it's just inherent uncertainty in this process. It's a little bit like getting on a plane with a tank of fuel and you're not sure where the destination is, but you're going to start flying. And like, we're pretty sure we'll make it, but things could happen. Maybe we won't. And that's just going to be really hard. And there's, there's the biggest variable from just a math perspective, if you're modeling this, is when are you going to die? If we knew that, retirement planning is so easy, but you don't know it. And so you've got to reach a point of like just understanding that that uncertainty is going to exist and there's going to be trade-offs. You're not going to spend the optimal amount. Yeah, I think getting comfortable with nobody can know. No modeling, machine learning predictor can know with certainty. And it's just going to be there. There's just going to be that uncertainty. And there's going to be, if you want to trade off, get rid of that uncertainty, you're going to make a trade-off to do that. And if you want to take on more, so just embracing the fact of the uncertainty is so, so important.
Yeah, I mean, you're bringing up like right away the kind of psychological effects of transitioning from saving to spending and potentially seeing those balances go down for the first time ever. I mean, sure, balances went down during the great financial crisis, but you were still saving. You still have many years till retirement, and you saw them rebound pretty quickly. And so, kind of while you're working, you're rooting for those big downturns in the market
Yeah.
because that gives you, stocks are on sale. It gives you a chance to buy in lower,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have a definite end date for when you're going to
Yeah.
retire. But then, things change when you are actually getting ready to retire and thinking about those two big unknowns. Like you said, A, how long am I going to live? And B, what's the market going to do? If I knew those two things, like it'd be easy to model out a spreadsheet for here's how you spend down your assets during your lifetime and you know have a nice retirement. But instead, we've got uncertainty on both of those fronts: longevity, market returns, and some uncertainty on the expense side too, around what kind of care you may need at the end of life, or if we start talking about disability and things. This I think is all of that is what produces the anxiety in folks that, in my experience, leads to underspending
Totally.
in like 95% of cases. What we do in reaction to those uncertainties is we don't spend. We don't want to see the account go down, or we really severely limit um, what we either we work longer and could have retired sooner, or we're limiting the type of retirement that we could have had we um, tried to deal with some of those
But
uncertainties in a
that
smart way.
underspending is completely logical. It's
Mhm.
rational. That behavior of, well, because I don't really know. It is completely rational and logical to want to underspend. So I just kind of like give people a break. Like, it's understandable why you feel that way completely, because you don't know. What if I live super long? What if the market crashes? There's things you can do, but yeah, like that's, um, yeah. And also, like, let's just be fair to, like, you can't know that you underspent until it's all over. That's the
Yeah.
other thing. That's what I was trying to say. Like, you can only know, oh, well, if, we could have spent more because the market returns and longevity. You don't know. You don't know. You don't know. You don't know. And there's not a retirement plan exists that can give you the highest spending in hindsight with no risk in today's, like, you can remove the risk today, but you're going to give up probably optimal in hindsight. I don't know. That's not, probably not totally making sense, but you're going to make trade-offs across the board. See if I can firm that example up in a few minutes, but
Yeah, I mean, I think so. So the key question is, what do we do with that uncertainty?
yeah.
Um, how? how do we both like get our arms around what are the levers that um, we have to pull in terms of spending, and um, what if we experience a bad string of market returns
Mm,
or a health event, or um, what how do we manage risk, and that's really, I think, the bread and butter of what I'm helping clients manage every day. How do we deal with uncertainty?
mm.
And that's nothing new. That uncertainty existed before you retired as well. It hits a little bit different when you don't have the expectation of a continued paycheck, an
Mm.
outside source of income. Um,
How much does modeling, projecting retirement, how much does that help with uncertainty, in your opinion?
Ooh, good question. It definitely has a role. If usually when clients come to me, if I were to ask them, well, how much do you want to spend in retirement? And then I can plug that into my model and we'll see, can you do that? Response is not usually to lead with a number. It's like, well, how much could I spend? That's,
Mm,
and so where I think modeling is helpful is framing that decision, and then showing what happens to kind of an initial plan under certain scenarios.
mhm,
Say a market downturn for the next 5 to 10 years, or what if there's a health event or a long-term care need, that sort of thing.
mhm,
How do That's where I think modeling can help, framing what's the impact of, like, well, what if our
mhm,
assumptions for market returns
mhm,
are 1% below what we
mhm,
were expecting? Or what if they're 2% below? Or, just to give people a framework for how to think about the impact of those various levers. I'll tell you what I don't like is in retirement is like the classic Monte Carlo framework, which is, we'll come up with a plan, we'll plug it into a random number generator that's going to simulate market returns, and then boil all of this down to some probability of success. You have a 90% chance of not running out of money, or you have a 60% chance of not running out of money. Um, I think that type of modeling, while it's interesting, from a maybe a mathematical standpoint, like, it leaves clients not knowing, what do I do with that number?
mhm,
You're conditioned all through grade school to want, think a 90% and above is an A. So, like, I want to get an A on my retirement, and therefore anything less than that must be really risky.
mhm,
But it's an overly simplified view of what that
mhm,
kind of modeling is really doing.
mhm,
And how we would react in a real world scenario where,
mhm.
market doesn't return what we think it's going to return. We don't just keep plugging away blindly, um,
Totally.
and roll the dice.
So I think like modeling, like doing like a 30-year retirement plan, like the people ask for it. I may not like it, but people ask for it. Like a 30, 40 year plan is just a sanity check to make sure nothing is glaringly obvious. If you've
Mhm.
done enough of them, you really don't need to. But I think what I want to say is retirement, like all financial planning, is a year-to-year thing. Like if you just say we're going to check in this year, does this number make sense with what we have? Fine. Does this number make like next year? Does it next year? Next year? That's the way to do it. But there's this desire for like, let me see what it's going to look like, and I'm going to feel better about this. Um, yeah, I think it's so interesting. Like why there's this. I mean, it's the desire for certainty. People want to feel like they know what they're going to get. Look, man, yeah, I don't love projections, but like also Monte Carlo is as good as we got. It's better than a straight line, say like I'm going to earn 6% a year and spend this much. That's horrifically wrong. Oh, Monte Carlo is like as good as we got for simulating random returns. There's a ton of flaws with it, but it's as good as we got. Like, so I think just seeing it, it's like, okay, you can see that if you want to, but just take it with a grain of salt. Like, this is a rough estimate of what might happen under these assumptions. Okay. Nothing's, the plane's not crashing in year 10. We're probably fine. But really, year to year, take it year to year.
Yeah. And that's why, like, the main way that I do
Oh,
retirement income planning. Go ahead. Yeah.
sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I would say that's the reason. The main way I do retirement income planning is like with the guardrails reports. The approach, there may be a Monte Carlo going on in the background to
Yeah.
kind of generate these guardrails, but the actual presentation of the plan is much more straightforward. Here's our spending capacity, expressed in dollars. You can
Mm-hmm.
spend $15,000 a month from here till age 97, which is
Mm-hmm.
your planning horizon. And then here are the situations in which we would adjust that $15,000 a month. Hey, if
Mm-hmm.
your portfolio goes down by 30%, we're going to cut spending down to 14,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Conversely, if the market does better than we've been modeling, we'll raise your income to $16,000 if
Yeah, but
your account balance hits, you know,
and that's fine.
this
That's
number.
fine. But it's also gonna be horribly wrong. And then when that year happens in 7 years, you'll make the decision on the spot. So like that's where, like,
Yeah.
again, it's a year to year thing. What's important is the decision you make today. Run it out, make sure it doesn't look insane. You make the decision today. Like standing here in 2026 going, well, in 2023, if the market's down, we're going to adjust your spending. It's okay, fine. But like year to year, if I said, how much are you going to spend today? How much are you going to spend this year, 1 year at a time? It's a lot simpler. You
Mhm.
could, I don't know. Um, yeah, I just like, it's okay. Like that projection's helpful as like a sanity check, but it's still a year to year thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so let's talk about how, I mean, we've already kind of gotten into it a little bit, but like how risk changes in retirement. We've already talked about kind of the two big ones, like longevity risk, and market risk. But kind of what other risks are there in retirement that maybe weren't there in the same way, um, before?
No, I think the longevity risk is the biggest one that like when you're working, kind of not necessarily the risk to you, but the risk to the people who are depending on you is that you die too early, right? And your income disappears. Now it's that you live too long. That's like the risk to you is like, oh, you might run out of money if you live to 110, so it's just very different there. I think that's just the biggest change. Yeah, I mean, the way market returns, like volatility totally changes. Like you said, when you're accumulating a 20% drop in the market is an opportunity. 20% drop when if you're distributing can be devastating. So like that's very big. Um, not sure what else really changes. Health is always a risk. That's always expensive, and like you might be exposed to different types of health care, like a long-term care type thing. But the biggest ones are just the way that volatility affects you and how now your risk is living too long
Yeah.
for your money.
Yeah, and to go back to the market risk, and to put the fancy name on it, it's a sequence of returns risk is the primary
Mhm.
issue.
Yeah.
It's what if we experience a bad sequence of returns? What if the market returns are negative in the first 10 years of retirement, which are that critical period when you're making the biggest distributions and there's the most uncertainty, versus a down period in the last 10 years of retirement, at last 10 years
Mhm.
of life. You can have two uh, market return sequences, that have the same average return over
Yeah.
30 years. But if one of them has all those down years kind of concentrated early in the plan, that's going to be much harder for a retiree overcome than one where those down years are sprinkled evenly throughout, or concentrated later in the plan. Let's talk about healthcare, because I think that's kind of the third area, healthcare, long-term care, where there's like the most uncertainty.
Mhm.
We've had some episodes on long-term care insurance, and how do we size the need for that, and the likelihood that you would need a significant amount of care, and what are some options to address
Mhm.
that. So I don't want to get into like the ins and outs of um, long-term care, but I think everybody knows that like you will experience likely the most healthcare spending occurs in the like final years of life. And so how do you plan for that? Or you may die peacefully in your sleep and not
Mm.
have that need. And
I think
so
you just go broke and have the government pay for it. It's a
yeah,
strategy.
it's like everybody's got a long-term care plan. It's just a question
Yeah,
of
yeah.
who made that plan for you.
No, I mean long term care, like all these is one. It's the other. It can sink you. It's my dad has a saying. It's the torpedo in the water that you don't know if it's going to hit you or when it's going to hit you. But it could sink you if it does. And it's another one of those trade offs you have to make, that you just have to like, prudent thing is to set some money aside in some way, shape, or form for this event that may or may not happen. And it's not a small amount of money. And that, you could set that money aside in the form of insurance premiums, like paying for long-term care insurance, or just setting aside portion of your investment portfolio for long-term care. But like, it's a very, very real thing. Um, that, man, just, it's like, I don't know what else to say. Like, it just sucks to have to prepare for. You don't want to have to pay for it. It's not fun, but you need to plan for it. Well, you are planning for it one way or the other, but like, yes, some money needs to be set aside. Again, whether that's insurance or just investment dollars, but you got to have a plan for it.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And the other thing I think is a big thing to think about, and something that I'm experiencing in my own family, is preparing for the possibility of cognitive decline. And
Yeah.
so it's not just most long-term care stays or needs are due to cognitive decline. um and so not only is the care part difficult and the expense part difficult, but just y- y- how do you can't predict cognitive decline, who's
See,
going to have it, who's not. And then there's the whole who steps in to manage the finances if the spouse who had historically managed those things is not able to do it anymore. And uh,
the challenge with the cognitive decline is like a lot of what you think about long-term care, like, oh, you can't walk or bathe themselves or dress themselves. That's generally kind of as the body's failing, which is generally when you're getting a lot older. And so it's pretty easy to, a lot of like planning software will model long-term care in the last 2 to 4 years of somebody's life. That's the typical outcome. Cognitive decline is completely different. It can hit you, as you know, in the prime of your life still. You can be 70 and you can be totally fine. And it's devastating. And that's one of those, like, yeah, I mean, it's just, it's even bigger torpedo that, even if you set money aside, like you might say, like, I'm going to set $250,000 aside for when I'm 90. Okay. But what if in 7 years you need care because of cognitive decline? It's very, very hard. And so that's, a big one to prepare for.
yeah. Yeah, and just like the family dynamics as well, of if you can't handle the day-to-day management of your affairs anymore, like who's going to handle those things? And so there's like a legacy or estate planning need there, to understand who steps in to manage your finances, or to make healthcare decisions or care decisions and that sort of thing.
And talk about what changes between, like, when you're accumulating versus retirement. These are conversations you need to be having before you need to have them. And that's a dynamic that changes because in a lot of ways, if we're going to stereotype, it's the kids who end up taking care of the parents. That's super hard to have that conversation because most of your life you're setting guardianship nominations for who will take your kids. Now you're going, who's going to take care of me? And it's really, really hard and it's uncomfortable and people don't want to do it, but you got to do it because otherwise, if you wait till it's happening, then you got a possibly cognitively impaired person trying to sign legal documents and you can't do it. So it's like, it's a big change and, it's not fun, but
No.
You gotta.
But it's one of those things that can be done well, and doing it well means, like, you've thought about it ahead of time, you've talked
Mhm.
to your family members, like, you've got they have an understanding of what your wishes would be
Mhm.
in this situation where you can't make those decisions anymore,
Mhm.
and like being proactive about dealing with issues of decline. I think one of the biggest areas is that also impacts the financial plan is the house. What
Yeah.
are we going to do with what is likely or was likely your largest asset while you were, accumulating, and still is a pretty big asset, and where you will live is a huge question,
Yeah.
you know, in
So
retirement.
I I know we're kind of talking about a sensitive subject with cognitive decline and long-term care, but I did want to talk about how like things that change your house that the way you can use your house is very, very different. Um, one thing I tell people like my age, our age, is like property values increasing don't actually help you currently. People say like, "Oh, property values went up. That's good for us." You know what happened for you? Like your insurance and your property taxes increased. It's not helpful when property values increasing helpful, or when property values increasing are helpful is when you downsize or sell. That's like when there's a gap, because especially if you're like if you're kind of like stepping up houses, like, let's say you go from a $250,000 house to a $500,000 house to $1 million house. Let's just stereotype that. A 10% increase in each of those is hurting you each time because you're falling further and further behind. So it's very counterintuitive. Versus when you're retiring, if you're going to sell the big house and go to the smaller one, that's actually when it's very, very helpful to do that. So that's one like slight reframing there. The other thing is that your house is not a totally illiquid asset. There are reverse mortgages out there that are not a scam, but can be used as a scam. But that is a pool of money that can be accessed. Talking about them right now, but that is a very intriguing tool that is available in retirement. So it's just like a different, like how you think about your primary home, um, is different. As we said, it's not just something that you have to just die and pass on fully.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I'd say for a lot of folks, if you're not for a lot of folks, their house is their long-term care plan. It's that pile of money or that value that could be used to fund a nursing home care
well,
stay.
yeah.
And while that is like it is an important source of funds in that scenario, and there can be liquidity from sources like
Hmm.
you said. It's also like you've still got to live somewhere,
Yep.
and what if one of the spouses needs care and the other one is still perfectly
Hmm.
healthy and wants to stay in the community and in the house, and then there's all of a sudden a problem with that house trying to be two things at once, both
Yeah,
your
totally.
long-term care plan and your place to live.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's super challenging. Like, yeah, definitely. Um, what else? Anything else? Big changes?
um, gosh, uh, I think we've hit on the big ones. I think just it's a difficult transition to make for all the reasons we've been saying. Not only are like the financial decisions kind of different than the ones that got you here. You can get to retirement pretty well if you're just saving 20% of your income and investing it in a low cost index fund, and you're diversified, and you're not overspending your means, and you're resisting that lifestyle creep. Like, you're probably going to be fine. And it's kind of a set it and forget it almost way of managing things. That's not to say there aren't more efficient things you can be doing, but the game does change a lot when you get to retirement, and you've now got more levers and things to pull, and different problems and things
Hmm.
to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say like you'll that whole when you say if you do all those things, you'll probably be fine. What that means is you'll have enough money to provide for your life, assuming you do the stuff we talked about today correctly, though, that you prepare for these
Yeah,
things. Like that's what being fine means. In that when we say that, like you'll be fine, I mean you have enough money doesn't mean you just keep going forever. But you got to
right.
like play this game the right way. Like the biggest thing I would say is like number one, it's my favorite phrase: embrace the uncertainty of retirement. You can't know how long you'll live. You can't know what the market will do, and you can't know what your health situation will be for the most part. And so just understand there's going to be trade-offs there. If you want to reduce some of that uncertainty, you're probably going to give up some of the upside. That's completely fine. Accept it. Also, just give yourself some grace that like being a little scared is rational and logical. Doesn't mean you have to operate out of fear and live in that place forever, but it's okay to feel that way. And if you make a few decisions out of fear, it's logical. Like, I mean, it's like you can get some help, but just it's okay. And then aside from me like shaming people for wanting to chill out in retirement for a little bit, it's fine for a little bit. Find that something. Retire to something. It doesn't have to be a paycheck. It's okay if it is a paycheck. You're not like, so I'm sorry, sidebar, but like some people are like, oh, I don't want to be seen as going back to work. Whatever, get that out of your head. Like, just find that thing that keeps you motivated and going. Because if you just retire to nothing, like I said, you'll die in your 70s. Seen it so many times. 2 years later, gone. You got to have that something.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this was a good topic, not just for people that are on the verge of retirement, but also for their kids who are entering, who are in the workforce now. Maybe their careers starting to take off, and those children who are in the sandwich generation, both caring for kids and now starting to think about mom and dad are needing a little extra help, and so even if you are not in this situation yet where you've got to be making some of these decisions about where the income's going to come from and what are we going to do about long-term care, and like your parents might be, you can help them think through that. You can be the one to be proactive in talking about some of these issues about health and long-term care and cognitive decline, and those aren't easy conversations to have, and it can be helpful to have um help with facilitating those conversations, but the important thing is to have the conversation, even if it starts awkward. Don't be afraid to have it, because if you don't have it, it's going to be too late by the time that you need to have it.
Or you're just doing it in a really uncomfortable time.
Mm,
Dealing
yeah.
with that right now with some family. Like, this isn't what we wanted to be doing right now.
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, and one of the yeah, there's that, and there's one of the happiest bits of news I get to deliver to people like who are thinking about retirement is like, look, you are most likely going to be just fine. Like, you could probably sustain a level of spending that's well above what you're currently doing. And
That's great.
so then the question is like, what do you want to do with that?
Mm-hmm.
What does your life look like without punching the clock every day? Or what would you spend your time doing if you had the freedom to not worry about money so much? And
Mm-hmm.
that's a fun conversation to have. And
Yeah.
obviously not everybody is in that position, but because of the uncertainty that we're dealing with, there's a lot more people who are probably could make that
Yeah.
decision sooner rather than later,
Yeah.
or have more options than the traditional, like, keep working till 65.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole lot more flexibility, and that's what makes this kind of planning work really fun.
Yeah. That's great. Good stuff, man.
Yeah. Um, cool. Well, this has been great, and we could dig into each one of these topics, and maybe we will on a future
Maybe we
episode.
will.
But yeah, thanks for the conversation.
My pleasure. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.